So it will be recorded. So record and the video. So. Wow, there's a lot of people in this one. Some of my sessions have just had a few people in them, but this one so far, it looks like we've got 20 people in here. So awesome. This is the one I've been the most excited about doing myself as well. So if you're just joining, feel free to, you can leave your mic off, but if you have questions, I don't mind if you jump in and ask those. And also I'll try to be checking the chat as we're going. So you can be putting stuff in there and hopefully I will see that. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Tracy Goins. I teach 5th grade at BI. And I love BrainPOP. I always have. And then a few years ago, maybe 3 or 4 now, I went through a process that BrainPOP has to become a certified BrainPOP educator. So I'm wearing my certified BrainPOP educator t-shirt today. So they have some great opportunities for teachers if you wanted to go through that program. There's great things that they do with that. There's a Facebook group that I learned lots of new things from. They listen a lot to teachers. And I've actually the last 2 summers done some contract work with them. I worked with them last summer to align all of their movies to national and state standards. And then this past summer, I worked with them to put together lesson plans for remote learning. Lesson plans that teachers can pull up, and it has activities already picked out for teachers for a week's worth of instruction. So Certified BrainPOP Educator program is great. And at the very end of my presentation, I've got some links to that. You'll learn a lot and also be able to learn and become part of the BrainPOP Educator family. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to my presentation, and you can follow along with that. I'm going to be focusing on one piece of BrainPOP, and that is the Playful Assessments is what it's called. And so last September, they contacted me for some work that I had done over the summer, and they chose me as their September Certified BrainPOP Educator of the Month. And part of that, I had to write up a little, one of my favorite things about BrainPOP, and it was the playful assessments that I really enjoy. And so I'm gonna go through and talk about what that is and how you can use that in your classroom. And it's really a fun piece and not just the videos. So this was gonna be a discussion in person if we were gonna be in person. So we're just gonna skip past that discussion there. But what I want you to do, if you are not already there, if you could go to your BrainPOP account and sign in, and there's actually a link right here. If you click on, if you're able to click on it, I'm not sure if you can or not, or if you just open a new tab and go to the food fight game on BrainPOP. And the food fight game is a fun one, and we'll be coming back to this too a couple of times. I want to log in. Yeah, and so if you haven't logged in before, you're going to log in with Clever if you've not done that with your school account. So use your Clever login. And the students do the same thing if you've not used it very much with your students. And then if you can just search at the top, food fight. Oh, it's going away. Food fight. And I want you to just play that game just for a couple of minutes. You can set it to be a 5-minute game. And so you might do that, and we probably won't finish. I probably won't give you the full 5 minutes, but if you want to play that game for about 5 minutes, and there's some fun sound there, I'm going to turn that off. You can pick your
eagle, driver, and dove. Vervet monkey, bark, bark.
You're just going to play as if you were 2 different people. So maybe play as a dove and an aardvark. And then I'm going to choose a 5-minute game. And just click next. And go ahead and just see what you can figure out on your own. Figure out and play that game for a little bit. I think I'll set a timer here for about 3 minutes or so.
Vervet monkey, zebra.
I wish there's a way I could see everyone's screens like on Go Guardian. I do see a couple of people just joining in, and I'm not sure, I can't see everybody on the screen, but if you have maybe had gotten out and gotten back in, but if you've just gotten on, they're playing the food fight game on BrainPOP. And so if you go and sign into your BrainPOP account and go and search for the food fight game, you can find that and play that. We'll actually play it a few times. Let's see. Right here. So on BrainPOP, you'd sign in and then search for food fight, and then this is the game that they are playing. I've got another minute left. We'll come back to it if you aren't able to get there quickly yet. All right, so you can go ahead and wrap up. You probably didn't get a chance to finish the whole thing, but I kind of just wanted to give you an idea of the kind of game that might be appropriate for a playful assessment. So we probably had to, if you hadn't played it before, there's probably some things you had to learn as you went. There's some directions, but often kids will get in there and, you know, there isn't just one way to do it. It's complicated. There's lots of layers to it. And so this is just one example of something that you might use for a playful assessment. So here we're going to watch just a little clip. I think it's about 2 minutes, if I remember right. Oh, no, it's 11 minutes. That's right. We're not going to watch the whole thing. But we're going to watch this, and it's going to talk about, from BrainPOP, what is a playful assessment. I had shown some videos in another session that I did, and sometimes the volume is not quite as loud, but I have it turned up on the video as far as I can. So you might check your volume there. But here is from BrainPOP, what is a playful assessment?
Hey everyone, my name is Kevin Miklosh and I'm the Director of Data and Assessment at BrainPOP. And today I want to talk to you about playful assessments, a term we like to use at BrainPOP a lot. What are they and why use a playful assessment rather than a normal assessment? So to start, I want to talk a bit about what are assessments. On a basic level, assessments want to measure your ability on a task. That task could be something simple like answering a multiple choice question, or it could be something more complex like playing a violin or performing some other instruments, or giving a presentation on a topic you should know about. There are typically three things that your ability to perform a task depends on. First is your background content knowledge, which is the thing that often assessments most aim to measure. Second is your grit, or your persistence, your ability to keep doing a task even when it gets difficult. And third, your interest in doing that task. Now, the traditional assessment typically looks like this. We have a learning experience and it's in a nice little box, and then there's some assessment that we can overlay on it. It usually has like a pre and post test, and the two don't touch. And that's kind of the point of it, that assessment is something that we can use to measure any given learning experience. It's kind of applicable amongst anything that fits inside that box. We want it to be generalizable as much as possible. Which also means that assessment needs some consistency, so it works the same way every time. And unfortunately, one good way to be consistent is to be boring. We're often
Yeah.
intrigued by different things, but bored by the same things, which means that many traditional assessments often end up kind of looking something like this. We have these, four-part multiple choice questions. This happens to be one on the water cycle. You can see it's not the most inspiring thing, but one thing that you can say about this is that anybody who's teaching the water cycle could use this to measure understanding on the topic they're teaching. And so it's very generalizable across any learning experience. So if we go back to our three-pronged effects on ability on a task, let's look at what traditional assessments do. So traditional assessments rely on generic test items, again, so they can work across any learning experience. They're very generic. And second of all, they're boring in order to provide an additional layer of consistency. What this means is that because they have generic test items, they do test content knowledge, but in a very abstract way, very decontextualized if you know it in general. And second of all, because they're often boring, they destroy interest, which means that grit is required in order for you to persist through this often boring activity, which means that as much as these traditional assessments might be wanting to measure content knowledge, they're measuring a very specific form of it, abstract content knowledge, and they're measuring your grit or persistence that you inherently have just as much. Now, in contrast, let's talk about playful assessments a bit. And these really, it's a word that has much in common with many other kind of words that get thrown about, such as stealth or embedded assessments, formative assessments, game-based learning, automatic portfolios, or something between a game and a quiz, or all kinds of different ways of describing what a playful assessment can be. This is fundamentally built on the idea I like thinking about a river of learning. That learning isn't something that has a beginning and end point, but it's something that ebbs and flows over time. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, but generally, if it's going well, it goes up. Now, in this, if you think of learning as a river, what you want to know is not necessarily where it just starts and ends, but you can have multiple tick marks along that river of learning, multiple points in which you might assess how someone's doing and how that river is kind of moving up and down, looking at that trend over time. What that means is that every kind of learning activity can be a point of assessment. And every time a student does something, you can understand a bit about what they know, such that learning and assessment become kind of intertwined and inseparable in this river of learning thing. You can't think about this learning experience as this separate thing from the way you would understand what a student is learning. And so they get totally intertwined together. And so, if we think about this, and again, our three-pronged ability on a task framework, we can see that playful assessments have two traits. First, they're very task and student-specific items. They're very specific to a particular context. And second of all, they tend to be fun. I mean, the word playful is in them. They're often made to be engaging in some way. Because playful assessments are so specific, they do test content knowledge, but in a very embodied, concrete way, in a very specific circumstance with a specific set of conditions, they test that knowledge. And second of all, because they're fun, they spark interest, which often enables kids to try harder on activity and persevere through it, which means that basically you're firing on all cylinders when you have a playful assessment. All three things are increasing your ability on a task. And what this really means is you're trying to create a situation with a playful assessment where you're getting a student's best possible performance on some task or ability or content knowledge or whatever you want to say. You're really trying to set up the situations for them to exceed as much as they possibly can. Which another way of saying that is that good learning sparks interest and helps students perform their best. And so do playful assessments. It's aiming at that same goal to really create that situation for students to perform their best. So that was very kind of abstract and theoretical discussion of playful assessment. So what I wanted to do was walk you through two examples of how we do playful assessments using two different features on BrainPOP. The first feature is a game we have called Sortify. Now, Sortify, as you might guess, is a game about sorting concepts into buckets. As a playful assessment, Sortify is really good at engaging students. It has some very game-like elements here. You can see that each of the buckets are worth different numbers of points. Some must be easier and harder. You have a score, there's tiles and buckets remaining. You feel like there's this goal of clearing all the tiles from the screen. It has some elements that feel very much like you're solving a puzzle or playing a game. Playful assessments also give students agency. So when you place labels on buckets, you can decide which labels you want to play with. You can do easy ones or hard ones, ones about things you know or don't know. It's a way of kind of customizing the experience to how you want to play this game. And actually, there's multiple ways to play through this game and actually to complete the game or use all the tiles. There's not one way to win. So we're enabling agency for students on multiple levels. The playful assessments are also invisible to students. So when you have a bunch of tiles in a bucket, you can open it up and get this screen. And you can see that there's a button on the bottom right of the screen there that says Submit Bucket. Now, another word for that would be Grade Me. Let me know if these tiles are right, but we don't say Grade Me, we say Submit Bucket because that's something that makes sense in the context of this game. I want to push this bucket away and see how many tiles I can clear. But when you do that, you get feedback on which of those tiles were correct and not correct, which is essentially assessment. So it's a bit invisible in some ways. And playful assessments also assess and teach simultaneously. So if you go to the end screen on this game, this is telling you what you got right or wrong on the game, which is, of course, a measurement of your knowledge, what tiles were correctly placed in which buckets. But this is also what you would want to look at from a gameplay perspective to understand how to play better in the game next time you were to play it. What things would have allowed you to get more points and do better in the game itself. That way, it's a bit formative in that it's both telling you what you know and directing you towards how to improve your learning to learn in that moment and to showcase your learning better in the future. And speaking of the future, playful assessments often have replay value. There's something that you can do multiple times again and again and aren't necessarily done after you finish them. The end of this game has a restart game button, and because Sortify has so much agency, there's so many different ways to play it, it makes sense to be something that you might want to play again. And so one good judge of whether something is or is not a playful assessment activity is to say, if students do this more than once, is it still useful to understand how they did over time? Is it still a useful assessment the second and third and 10th time they've done it? Okay, so let's jump to a different example. That was maybe a unfair example because Sortify is a game and the word playful is an assessment, but it is something that can apply not just to games. And so this is the second example. I want to go through a tool on BrainPOP called Make a Map, which is a concept mapping tool. It's a tool that can also be used as a playful assessment. So this is something that shows another way that playful assessments can assess and teach simultaneously. In the Make a Map tool, students construct concept maps where they link nodes together that are based on concepts in the related BrainPOP movie. Because concept maps are about linking nodes together with connecting phrases, they kind of symbolize the way we connect knowledge in our brains and organize knowledge together. It's a good way of thinking through and teaching yourself the ideas on a topic, the process of actually constructing this concept map. But because you've made that knowledge visible, it's not only a way for you to learn how these topics are related, but to showcase your learning in a visible way that your teacher can see what you know and understand where you are in your learning process. So this visual representation of concepts linked together is not only something that helps you learn something, but it's also something you can simultaneously show as evidence of your learning. These playful assessments are also concrete and specific. Each of these keywords here is a keyword from our movie, and they have a play button next to them. When you hit that play button, you jump to a specific moment in the movie where that keyword is discussed. So it's very concrete and specific to that BrainPOP movie. You're decontextualizing and decompartmentalizing that specific movie, not some idea in general. But these playful assessments, in this case, the Make a Map tool, can give students agency too. There's also a custom node button, so you aren't limited to just the keywords that we supply that you can build into your Make a Map, but you can also bring in knowledge from outside the BrainPOP movie that might also be about that topic that you've learned from any given source. That would also be related to your concept map. You can choose what knowledge you want to bring in and how you want to relate that knowledge together. And finally, playful assessments are refined over time. This is another way of kind of saying they have replay value. The nice thing about a concept map is it doesn't necessarily end once you've made your map. As you learn more about this topic, you can add those new concepts into this map, describe how the new things you've learned have related to the old things you already knew. And there's also, as you see on the left-hand side, there's a note panel that was opened up, so you can write about how that process is changing over time and reflect on your learning as you go. So it's something that doesn't necessarily end, but it can keep having value as it's refined over time. So that's the second example, and that's all I have to talk about. I hope you enjoyed this talk about playful assessments, what they are, and why I use them. Thank you.
All right, so some good ideas there. Nope, don't play. Do that. There we go. So there are some different types on BrainPOP, and of course, BrainPOP is not the only place you can go for playful assessments, but BrainPOP has a lot of those. So I've linked a couple of them in there, the Make a Map and Make a Movie. Those, if you go to a particular BrainPOP movie, then next to it, it'll have a link to the Make a Map and the Make a Movie for that movie. Games and Simulations is going to open up a, that link right there will go directly to their Game Up section. And so they really try to make quality games that are not just, a one-time play. There are some that are in there, but if you go to that link, it's going to have some more, some of the more simulations, the more detailed games, like Food Fight that you were playing earlier. You can see how that one kind of lends itself to multiple plays, play it multiple times. And so at this point now, I'll talk about how I use that as a playful assessment. So when I'm doing my unit on, it's called Web of Life, and we're talking about food chains, food webs, how energy moves through an ecosystem. Towards the beginning of the unit, I have the kids play the game, and they just play it, see what they can figure out. And then throughout our unit, maybe once a week, maybe a couple of times a week, I say, okay, we're going to take 10 minutes. We're going to play a game of Food Fight. And as we're going through the unit, it's kind of that river of learning. Hopefully they're getting better at the game because they're learning more things. Not only are they learning the game, but they're also learning more things about how food chains work. You could have them play a game where they just, drag the pictures and make a food chain, but how this is much more realistic as a real life situation in that Food Fight game. And so a game that takes multiple times to really figure out might be a really good game for a playful assessment. And then the creative coding, that is linked there as well. With the creative coding, that opens up, not every movie has a creative coding, but that link right there will link you to all of the ones that do have a creative coding. And so with the creative coding, let's see, let's go here to plot. This is a good one. And so then over on the side here, it says creative coding. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later on as we get through the slideshow here. So those are just 4 of the ways that for the places on BrainPOP, you can find some good activities for that. So games and simulations, I just like to say that not all games are created equal. You've got those games they play one time and they're done. There's not any real depth to it. Oh, and I didn't switch my tab, sorry. Games and simulations that allow for multiple strategies. They require critical thinking, and they encourage connections. So that Food Fight game, there's not just one answer to that. They can change their animal. They can change the things that they start to play with. And they mimic real life situations. If you just have that worksheet like in the video where it talked about the water cycle, that's not a real life situation. That's a piece of paper. And so that doesn't mimic a real life situation, but that Food Fight game, that's real life. That's a real ecosystem. Another point that I put there, students may need to play multiple times to really grasp gameplay or simulation requirements. If I'm going to use the Food Fight game as an assessment and I hadn't played it throughout the whole unit, it wouldn't be fair to the students for me to use that game as an assessment, because if they're just using it for the first time, they're not going to do very well. And so if I'm using a good game, they're going to want to play it before that. And really, though, because it's so complicated, the fact that they've played it before the actual test, they're not going to be given any answers. It's not like they're given any answers because, as I'll show you later on, there's ways where they need to reflect on it. Allow gameplay simulation throughout the unit, not just at the end. And then it says here, use the game score, so the score at the end of the game, and or snap thought, which is another tool I'm going to talk about here in just a second, to determine their grade if you need to use it as a grade. See a question here, make a movie only works in BrainPOP, not BrainPOP Junior. I thought that is now available. Let me come back here for a second. And actually, I don't think I have BrainPOP Junior on my account. I thought that they had added that recently. Let me come back here and see. I don't think it's going to let me in. Yeah, I can't get in there to BrainPOP Junior. But that could be possible that Make a Movie is not available for BrainPOP Junior. Yeah, thanks, Melissa. Sorry about that. But Make a Map is. I do know Make a Map is available there. So then I put Food Fight back in here now. So if you want to go back and take a couple minutes to play, you can either continue the game you had before, or now with these things that we've talked about a playful assessment, now I want you to start thinking about how does this demonstrate learning of food chains, food webs. How could you use this as you play for a little bit longer on that game? So I'll set a timer for about 3 minutes again, and you guys can go back and think about that while you play. Got about a minute left. All right, so hopefully you can get to kind of a stopping point. So hopefully now you can start seeing how this maybe could be used as, throughout a unit. What I would do at first is I'd have the kids just play it and figure out what they want to do. Next time I might play it after we've talked about a lesson that has to do with predators, predators and prey, producers, consumers, and then as they're playing, they, go around and talk to them about which of these are producers and which of these are consumers, which one's the predator and which one's the prey. I might ask, well, why did you put this in first? Why did you choose to put this in there? And just talk with them as they're playing to just draw out that vocabulary and get them talking about the game and how it applies to their content. But again, it's in a real life situation here. And so the next piece then, as I'm talking to them, I'm getting good things. And so if I'm going to use this though as an assessment, I can, write some things down as I go, but BrainPOP also has, of course, a extra little tool in here for many of their games and simulations. It's called Snap Thought. It's a snap thought tool, and it's a place for them to explain their thinking at various places throughout the game. And then you can choose as a teacher to give them prompts or not. And then I love how this can encourage kids to use content-specific vocabulary. This is the video that's really short, and so I'm going to play this video real quick to talk about the snap thought tool, and then we'll take a look at it.
With SnapThought, capture key moments and challenges while you play. Take screenshots of your in-game progress and add written comments and reflections before submitting them to your teacher for feedback. SnapThought is now available on many GameUp games. Have fun exploring on your own, or learn more on BrainPOP Educators.
There's a lot of links at the end of the extra. Oops, sorry. Away. Nope, we're done with you. I got these out of order, I guess. So this is something that I use. So when it's time for the actual assessment now, this is the end of the unit. They've played the game, 3, 4, 5 times. And this is the day of the test. And we do have other assessment pieces, of course, that we use, but I use this as a grade as well in science. And so I put this up on the board, and these are just some sentence starters for them to use with the SnapThought tool. So I have them, they must do 5 SnapThoughts. That's the limit, is 5. And so they must do 5 throughout their game, and I make sure to remind them, don't wait till the very end, because then you won't be able to do them all, and you'd have to play the game over again. So I give them required and then some optional ones of their 5. So and this is, again, where I'm getting to the meat of the content and they're explaining their thinking. I chose to play as the elephant because, and so hopefully they've played this enough to say, okay, I know that the elephant and some of the things I'm looking for here in their answer has lots of different opportunities for prey. There's lots of different animals that it eats. And so I won't run out of food. And then it says I chose the, gazelle as my opponent because it doesn't have a lot of prey that it eats. So it's easy for it to run out of food. And then at the end, it says I won or lost because I lost because I didn't have any food left. My opponent ate all my food. And then some optional ones that I give them is I chose to play the blank card. So the cards down at the bottom of the game, I chose to play the tree card first because I know that we need to start an ecosystem with producers, something like that. When I put the blank card in, it affected my organism by, so when I put the carpenter ant in, my organism got more food. Here, the last one says my strategy for winning is, so maybe they use that one. My strategy for winning is to put in lots of plants, lots of producers, because then the next level of organisms have lots to eat. And so using these sentence starters gives them things to talk about. As long as they do the 2 required, they can write about whatever they want on the others. But at least for my 5th graders, the sentence starters are really helpful for them to have that to start with. And so I put this up on the board and they play the game, and then using the SnapThought tool at the bottom of the screen, they can do that. So if I come back here to food fight, I'm going to switch my tab here. So as I'm playing, I click on the little camera at the bottom of the screen. It takes a snapshot. And then over here to the bottom left, you can see a little like a pile of pictures. So this is the screen that I just took a shot of, and then I can type my answer. I chose to play as the dove because, and then I'd fill that out and answer that, and then I close it, and it's got that in there for me, okay? And then I can keep playing, go back to the game. And I can take another snapshot at another point. So I'm going to put in the acacia tree. I can take a snapshot here. And then here's my, I didn't scroll down. Here's my second one. I put the acacia tree in first because it is a producer. That's not spelled right. Okay. It will be food for other organisms. Okay, so you can totally see what they're understanding about the content here. And then they just play the game, and because they have, this is one of the required ones, it's the I won/lost. They're going to have to finish the game and then explain why they lost or why they won. I won because I had plenty of food to eat. So make a map is another one that they talked about in there. So on this slide, I've just talked about it a little bit more. Concept mapping tool, the BrainPOP images are over here already, or you can search for others. You can start with a blank screen, or you can use templates. There's templates that you can pull in here. These little gray lines are where they can put those nodes over onto there. You can add multiple movie topics as well. So there are several that have to do with food webs, food chains. So you can add multiple ones into the same movie over, you know, if you spent a couple of weeks and you've, you know, watched 3 or 4 different BrainPOPs, they can put all of that into one movie, or one map, sorry. And they can add to it over the course of the unit. So maybe they start building on it, and they build it, and they're adding more things that they've learned as they go. And then the notes on the side, they can add that to tell what they've learned. So on the screen here, I've also linked, there's a step guide, so it's like a step-by-step of how to use Make a Map, but then there's also a generic rubric that you could use to score that if you were using it as an assessment that you wanted a grade for. And you can, it's a Google Doc that you can make a copy of and then edit that yourself. So you can use what's there and then modify for yourself as needed. So I'm back. I think I lost my sharing. Okay. Then we have Make a Movie. Make a Movie is so fun because the kids actually make their own BrainPOP movie to show their understanding of a topic. This is great to do at the end. They could even do it, you know, they could work on it as they go. So at the very beginning of making a movie, they can choose from either a pre-made letter. So it would say, Dear Tim and Moby, and it has some information on it, or they could write their own, or you could give them a prompt. So your letter needs to say this, and then it becomes Dear and the student name, instead of Dear Tim and Moby. And then there's images already in there that are great that they can use, or the kids can draw on the screen and draw their own images. And then you can also use a computerized voice. So they would type in the text and then the computer would read it, or they can record their own voice. And that's really fun. The kids really enjoy that. And then, you know, share them with the class, share them, you know, out to families. It's really fun. So again, for this one, there's a step-by-step guide. And then this one also comes with a generic assessment rubric. It's the same as the, you know, it's the same format. It's a Google Doc. Make a copy of it and then adjust it for what you need. So the other one that I talked about was creative coding. And this used to be an optional thing that we had to pay extra for, but I believe now it is included. So it's a digital project to show their understanding. So, you know, as you can see on here, they can make a museum or a game or a story. There are prompts that walk you through step-by-step what to do. So you as a teacher don't even need to know how to code. It will walk them through it and tell them exactly what to do. I'll go over here to the plot story again because that had creative coding on it. And so there's the movie here, and then we go to creative coding. And here are where we can choose from the examples. So museum, story, game, and you can, you know, with your own class, you might say, okay, you can pick from museum, story, or game. Or you might say you can pick from any of the 7, depending on what you want from the kids and what you think would help them to best demonstrate their understanding. But if I come here to museum, we'll just click on this one because it'll walk you through it. Code a digital museum to show what you know about plot and start coding. So then it's got directions right down here. And I click show me. And then it's going to go step by step of what to do. It's just going to walk you through all of the steps. Type the words, add when the sprite is clicked over here. It tells you exactly what to do. So if you've got kids familiar with this, they're going to fly right through it. But over here on the right-hand side, it's showing, you know, what you end up with. It's got all of the sprites. Those are the little characters. There's different backdrops, all kinds of fun stuff. So it literally steps them through what to do, and kids can figure it out. They really can. Underneath each one of them, it shows, I'm going to leave that there, what coding program. So there's Scratch for these. Some kids are familiar with using Scratch in other places. And these use VidCode. And so that's just a different way of coding. I've done a comic before. It kind of walks you through what that is, what VidCode is. But then this has directions over here of what to do. Click next. And so this, they're typing in code, HTML code, but it tells them exactly what to do in here. And then they can, their graphics and things are on the right-hand side, and it walks them right through it and helps them with that. So you can have, you know, I did one. I'm going to see if I can get to my stuff. Maybe it's down here. Oh, there we go. So on food chains, my projects, let's see, all my projects. I didn't get this out and ready, so we might just skip this for now. Anyway, I made a little, I made a comic. Yeah. So this was one that I made as part of the BrainPOP conversation or certification. I made this little thing, and I think it's not working. Oh, start. So this was something that I coded. I hope it works. Keep going. I think my code might need to be fixed. Okay, so we're gonna go back to, oh no, there it is. There's supposed to be another person on here. That's right, I need to go back and fix that. Okay, so creative coding is there. There are also, you know, assessment rubrics that are available for that as well. Those are on the BrainPOP Educators website, and there's several different ones. So those are PDFs that you can download and look at. So lots and lots and lots of resources on BrainPOP. I can't say how much I love BrainPOP and how they help teachers, and webinars. There's tons of webinars. There's articles. If you've never been to the BrainPOP Educators website, you can find anything you want there. On the BrainPOP website, if you are at the top right corner, or top left corner, sorry, I have this little drop down. My school does BrainPOP, and then we have BrainPOP. I can't even read that. It's so small. Oh, this must be BrainPOP ELL because it's in Hebrew. That's interesting. Okay, I think I can change that. But then it also has BrainPOP Educators. And so that has so many resources on it that you can get lost in there, or at least I can, because I'm a nerd like that. Go in there and find all this stuff. So if you get in there, have any questions, you know, a lot of you have heard this spiel before, but if you have any questions ever, just feel free to let me know. I'll be able to help you find anything that you need and help you find, there's lots of resources. So lots of ways to use BrainPOP. Thank you for coming, everybody. The last slide of the presentation has a link to the sign-in. So if you've not done that before, just click on that, type in your name, and you're good to go. So thanks for coming, guys. I'll stay on a couple more minutes if you have any questions.